Just a couple of things. Up until last year, where we held the first one of these, I'm kind of looking at an online instructor. I felt like I was teaching online by being dropped in a tube. I was out there all by myself, nobody really to talk to, and to bounce around ideas with. Now, maybe some of your departments where you're all doing this aren't that way, but I think a lot of us are. And so we have this meeting again. That's a really good thing. We're talking now about bringing students in. I think the idea of having a much broader conversation, like Myra just suggested, maybe this is something we want to talk about in the fall at that follow-up meeting, because I see
this thing itself is exactly what I'm talking about. It's not. I'm not talking in the classroom stuff.
Right.
I'm talking this kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is a light bulb session, right? Everything's going on here.
Yeah.
There's two major growth areas strategically for this university. One is international students. And we're talking about infrastructure changes and needs to accommodate that growth area. It doesn't always mean more money. It just means looking at who we are and what we're doing. But this is the second area, and you're right. I mean, a number of us have been doing online as we can, and we're doing it. But it's time to look at, that's why I brought up the question about administrators. Because it's time to look at this and say, these are the two growth areas. And from a strategic planning point of view, how can we best serve this group? Because the competition's out there, and they're nipping away at us left and right. And if we don't do something about it, you cannot, as just pointed out, you cannot ride on the backs of faculty that are trying to innovate. It's got to be something that's the big picture. And so if we look at it, as you're pointing out, as a discussion on campus strategically, what can we do to better serve? And you were saying, we were talking about online, but we've got the Johnson County classes. They say the same things up there. That number is going to continue to grow. So we're going to use more, I want to use more blended hybrid classes. But they're going to have the same questions. They're going to have the same points that you're making. I don't really know the campus.
Yeah, and part of what this is it's to start discussion. It's not the concrete answers. And it's also to get you thinking just a little differently about, it's not about telling the IT people they got to install another application.
No.
It's saying, all right, we just got to keep revisiting this again and again. We have the front end of the curve with the inspired individuals. Now we need to, remember, I got an email the other day telling me to come on down and make great pottery. It can even extend to, these private organizations. I didn't know where the Memorial Union was again when I first got that email. Just be aware it's not enough just to send an email. Put me on a listserv. Look, I'm taking care of our online students. Anyway.
And I think that point is so important, because it does rub us all the wrong way when we get all these messages that really don't have a thing to do with us. But I can tell you that as I have worked now about 10 years with students in regional programs, and packed myself up and gone in snowstorms and thunderstorms and ice storms and every other kind of weather to be there and be there on time and be prepared. And I try to tell them about ESU. This is your university. Here's what's going on there. They could not have cared less. What they do want, though, is they want to have social interaction with each other. And they like to get together at noon on Saturday and at 5 o'clock on Saturday. And they want to have a university-sponsored graduation and a graduation party, and they really think the university owes that to them, because we do that for people here in Emporia. See?
Yeah. And a lot of it may seem unfruitful, but you're kind of priming the punt for the next thing. Dr. Foyle, I took a class with him. First class I ever took here. IT 800. Great experience, but I felt like I was on an island most of the time. Most of it was kind of through Blackboard, bigger class. I felt like I was on there really learning by myself. When I went to the tailgate, I had a great conversation. I think we were joking around, talking about bringing dog biscuits to a faculty meeting or something.
Don't share that.
Well, it's not bringing is the problem. It's that everybody ate them at the meeting. But then suddenly I felt like I had, he probably doesn't realize this, but I felt like that was great. I have a connection. So it's not just student to student. I want these events so I can start feeling like I feel like it was prime the pump for. Then suddenly I called him, and I think maybe he wishes there wasn't a tailgate, because then I was like, I think I'll call Dr. Foyle. So I feel comfortable. Anyway. Cheryl?
When you were doing the research, the literature review, and all of that upfront piece of this project, did you visit the research or the literature about recruitment and retention? Because in the on-campus student literature about how we get students and how we keep them, there's a whole lot of research about what you're talking about, community building and community enactments, cultural membership in the organization, and it sounds to me like that's a great next place to go, or to tie in if you haven't visited that.
I did look at that. I almost ignored it a little because I thought it was almost, there's been a lot of research in that area, and I almost thought it was too easy to come up here and say, people won't stick to your program, because I've noticed a lot of people are sticking to the program now. I mean, it seems like a lot of that research was 10 years ago, was very significant. It's gotten to a baseline, and again, I don't want to pick on Blackboard, but like the Blackboard baseline, it's good enough that I'm going to stick it out. Okay, now I'm talking about that next level, which is, I'm going to get to the end of the program now, but am I going to care about the people I was with enough to give them money, keep up professional dialogue with them? Am I going to be excited when I see Corky on the TV?
And yearbook, I found my yearbook picture. That's yearbookyourself.com. You can take your photo and put it in. I had that on Facebook, and my students told me to take it down because it creeped them out. Real quick, graduation day. This is a photo I took at graduation, and I think you have a quick story.
Same kind of thing as the yearbook. It was a whole process the day before, coming down. But graduation day, for example, they grouped me with, I realized on that day I was in the teacher's college. Nobody told me until that day. And I was like, I remember recognized maybe 4 people who, again, I had met at tailgates, and those people I recognized. And then the people I met the day before, and I remember waving to them because I was told I had to go to the end of the line, because I was going to graduate with the S's, by God it. And I did. So I sat by 2 S's. And I met them that day. And the thing is another little detail. If you're a face-to-face graduate student, you very well might have run into these 2 S's. I met people, all sorts of people who weren't in my department. It made sense to graduate in the teacher's college because you run across everybody, but I'm an online student. I barely know the 5 people who waved to me as I walked by them. And so I'm sitting out there and I go, I was pretty proud of what I did, sadly. But I felt like, why didn't anybody think of just grouping the IDT people together? And these people were talking about the same thing, and we were kind of joking a little bit like, and the other sad thing, here's the other important part of the story. 2 Pitt State grads. And they were bashing on ESU. And I was like, that's kind of sad. They went through the same experience I did, and they were like, we're just here, and they both explained the reason they were there was somebody else made them come today, and they still got their pit gorillas. And there's always a little bit of that between undergrad and graduate, but there shouldn't have been that much to me. I mean, kind of telling. Maybe it's not telling, but you should feel a little, that loyalty, again, the point of that is to be loyalty as an end in itself. It's for all the other things it breeds,
So some solutions. These are things that we do in our department, and some of them work great, some of them don't work at all, some of them that we're still working on. We do have a mailing list of what we used to call listserv. We have an IDT student listserv, and we have an alumni listserv, and probably several emails every week go out, jobs, things like that. I found it's kind of interesting, but when I use a listserv, even though it's a listserv and anyone that's a member can post, people send me emails to post on the listserv half the time, So it's kind of interesting. They're not comfortable posting stuff on the listserv themselves.